Hi guys, today I wanted to discuss the books that I read in February. I did think it was a bit late and just wanted to essentially move on to March, all the books that I read in March instead, but I seem to have fractured my ability to read romance. I'm not reading as quickly this month, so I thought it was worth discussing what I read in February instead, like earlier in February. So without further ado, let's get started. Our first book is We Don't Talk About Last Night by Helen Cooper. I'm not too sure of the year this was published, but essentially it's about an arranged marriage, I believe. Bear with me here because I read most of these books in the earlier part of February, and I don't remember everything in a detailed manner. If I remember correctly, it's about an arranged marriage between like two rich families, and there was some revenge involved, and it was very cinematic. The book was very fast-paced, and it was mostly dialogue. I respect the concept of it, but I don't think it was executed that flawlessly. Character-wise, I think the characters were a bit shallow, and there were a lot of inconsistencies with the time frame. It was set in a very short time frame, and there were inconsistencies in the time frame that came out in the dialogue. That's just a thing that I noticed. Okay, so the mystery of the book was set up nicely, but the romance part of it was not. The hero and the heroine, Tiff and Jake, I felt like their handful of interactions weren't powerful enough to warrant Jake undoing this long time planned revenge that they had going on. Especially given how calculated they all were, it was just hard to buy how that would happen. Another thing about this book is that a lot of the dialogue pertaining to affection, pertaining to love, seemed stilted. There was something wrong with the execution. I just felt like it wasn't smooth. And the story would bring out these shock factors, but just at the time that you were getting bored with it, just so that you would put up with it until the end, like shock factor after shock factor. But it was a very quick read. Like, I spent like 3 hours reading it, and although there were big flaws in the execution, I did actually enjoy the mystery, and it was something different and a bit twisted, and I just think it would have shined if it was improved a bit execution-wise. For my second book, I will be discussing The Hardest Fall by Ella Mays, and I have read a really good book of her before, Jason Thorne, To Love Jason Thorne, and I really enjoyed that book. And The Hardest Fall is a sports romance, and it didn't hit the same for me. There was no real conflict. The composition was messed up for me, and the main characters, Zoe and Dylan, I thought that there was something off there chemistry-wise, and I just thought that the story was very slow, overly descriptive, almost dramatic in with the inner monologues and everything. It almost seemed like everything in life was a life lesson, based on like how dramatic the inner monologue was. I actually thought that the main material in itself wasn't that bad, but it could have been stripped down a lot more. I think it could have used a lot more literary editing. I do understand a writer's impulse to be protective of your work in its first iteration, but I don't think every long-winded paragraph is a diamond. I thought the epilogue of the book was good, but overall it wasn't enough to make up for the crash landing that we had to go through to get there. Our third book is Marriage for One, which is a marriage of convenience type trope. It's also one of those stories where the theme is like it's a grump and a sunshiny character. I really enjoyed reading this book. I particularly liked that there were parts that were non-sexy almost. There were like issues like they were discussing like constipation and like sneezing into a cup, like real things that you go through in a relationship, not just, steam. The turning point was a little bit late, but since the author makes these books lengthy, it didn't feel incomplete, which is something that I really liked. Another touch that I appreciated was that the ending was written sort of like you were doing your vows, like they were saying their vows. That the treatment of the ending was like really nice for me. Our next book is Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey, which is expected. I think I've been reading Tessa Bailey like every month since I discovered her. And with Fix Her Up, the author pays respect to the importance of banter in the building of tension. I've read other books that sort of crash land into that first intimate scene in the book because they miss that crucial, important first step, but not Bailey, obviously. She knows how to build longing, which is something that I've noticed in the books of hers that I've read so far. It was a bit caveman-ish, like with the I need to be her first everything, or I need to be like everything and stuff. Sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's like tipping over the edge of like, is it too caveman-ish? Is it too backwards? But yeah, that's just a point that I noticed. And there was no epilogue to this book, and I think it would have been nice to have that. I mean, the book is good the way it is, but I just would have loved that cherry on top. There were some stereotypes about men and women in this book, in this story, because there was a lot of like portrayal of women as like being whiny, passive aggressive, like helpless flowers, and then men are sometimes portrayed as like gruff, like non-feeling, like his word is law. I mean, it was a bit hard to swallow, especially with Stephen's character, the older brother. Stephen and his wife, they were like that quintessential, like stereotypical tough guy and that helpless, like Popeye and Olive type thing going on. And I don't know, I didn't feel okay with that because it's a bit, I don't know, backwards. But overall, great book. Tessa Bailey, if you're looking for like strong romance, like strong chemistry between characters, it's something that Tessa Bailey has not failed in so far for me. Next up, we have a 2-for-1 special, Sustained and Sidebard by Emma Chase. And this is a lawyer law themed book. Full disclosure, I actually I got these books because I thought I confused Emma Chase with Nicole Chase, which I've read before. Nicole Chase wrote Suddenly Royal, which I really liked, and I was looking for other books, and I completely forgot that it was Nicole Chase and not Emma Chase, so I got Emma Chase's Sustained, and I ended up really liking it. The author was pretty freaking slick, using the guy's POV for the entire book. She must know that readers really like seeing into a guy's thought process. I mean, it's not the most sensitive, and it can be crass, but it is a guy's POV in every terrifyingly accurate sense. The flip-flopping idiocy was captured like really scarily accurate in this book, and it goes on for the entire book. The hero of the story, Jake, who's a lawyer, meets Chelsea, who has a bunch of nieces and nephews. I think there were 6 of them. Basically, their parents die in a car crash, and their aunt Chelsea has to take care of these 6 kids, and then Chelsea and Jake meet and fall in love and blah blah blah, and basically that's the gist of the story. And Jake wasn't perfect by any means, but Chase didn't portray him as this sort of diamond in the rough either. Like, he wasn't like a special little boy just waiting to be like changed or whatever. He was just as he is, and I thought that was refreshingly transparent. He's an asshole. It is what it is. Also, a good move on the author's part is leaning into the humor of it all. Like, this cynical lawyer guy gets thrust into daddom with 6 children. I think it was very smart of the author to lean into like the humor in his floundering and his sort of cluelessness in it. And Jake was just so great about everything, about being a dad, and like, I wouldn't say no if this was a series. Actually, to add to that, I believe that making this Jake and Chelsea story into a series would have fleshed things out a lot better, because right around the time that Jake started flip-flopping between like wanting to be with Chelsea and fearing all the responsibility, around that time I felt like the author was almost a bit rushed to close things out, and I feel like if this was a series, it would have been fleshed out a lot better. Overall, I think the author, Emma Chase, did a really good job with this story, and I will definitely be reading a lot more of her works in the future. And kudos also to the author for successfully giving each child a turn in the spotlight. A lot of times when there are a lot of characters in a single book, especially kids, it becomes hard for a reader to distinguish the personality and like to see them as like fully fleshed out characters, because like kids are sort of taken in as a bunch. But I think the author did a really good job in like giving each child like a unique personality and something about them that makes them unique and makes you remember them as like this is this kid and this is that kid. And not only did I remember each of the children, but I remember their order, like 6 of them from eldest to like the last kid, and I thought that was a really good job. And she made it really easy for a reader to like connect and appreciate the kids. Related to Sustained by Emma Chase is Sidebard, which is a shorter book about the same characters, Jake and Chelsea, which was a really, really lucky find for me, because I just didn't know about it. And then later on, well after reading Sustained, I discovered Sidebard, which is like an additional like 200 pages of content about their story. And it was about Jake and Chelsea wanting to have another kid, and it was such a cute conclusion to all of their stories. Like, you get to see all of the children like come into their own and grow up, and it was just so nice. I feel like anyone who would want to read Sidebard would have to read Sustained first to fully appreciate it. But yeah, just read both, and read Sustained and then Sidebard. It was such an enjoyable, like, fast, heartwarming read, and it really made me happy for a short while. Our next book is Tangled, also by Emma Chase, and there's a lot of Emma Chase books, but yeah, Tangled by Emma Chase. And reading this book felt a lot like reading an episode of How I Met Your Mother, this series How I Met Your Mother. And Chase's writing of a guy's POV is still very much on point. This book is like the previous one that I discussed of hers. It's also a guy's POV, but yeah, it was on point, but he was just not my kind of guy. Drew almost like lorded himself over other people too much for my taste. He always seemed like he had a life lesson to impart, even though he couldn't tell his ass from his elbows. And yeah, it was a accurate type of guy, but he just wasn't my kind of guy. The flow of the story was a bit flat to me. The first chapter of the book was a strong hook, but the discussion of the revelations that led up to that moment was kind of a letdown, because it was miscommunication yet again, and it's just becoming like a go-to for most of these romance novels. A pro in my book is that this story is one of a few that I've read where the guy was not forgiven so easily. Because usually in romance books, when the guy F's up, and he does, always, the guy has a long schmeal about being an asshole, and I'm so sad with myself, and I'm all that stuff, and it gets forgiven easily to conclude the book, because we have to, time's a ticking, and we have to end this book at some point, which I totally understand. But sometimes I can appreciate when the author allots some pages into the guy not being forgiven easily, and I just thought it was nice. It was a nice touch. Our hero, Drew, was tenacious and funny. Overall, his positive characteristics were just not enough to make up for everything else. Our next book is The Dugout by Megan Quinn, and I had to include a sports romance. As I mentioned before in previous videos, I'm on an endless quest to find a really, really good sports romance, and The Dugout was almost perfect for me, because it had the humor of The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams, and it had the highlighted baseball talk of Moonshot and Coatsy, and it had that fun, light aspect of books by say Penny Reid, and there was drama, but not too little, not too much. It almost had this Kristen Callahan vibe to it, which is a deadly combination of good writing. And yeah, as a sports romance, I thought The Dugout was almost perfect. And it is a baseball romance, and it's about this girl who's in a very baseball legendary family, and this girl is the expert of the sport, even though she's a girl, and she knows the sport in a sort of technical sense, and she ends up coaching this player who's not in his who seems to have lost his mojo at some point in the story. And yeah, that's the basic gist of it. And yeah, and I thought this book was really dangerously good, and I have to admit I broke in a cold sweat when I was at about 50% of the book and they got together at 50% of the book. But yeah, I was nervous, but the author pulled through, and the turning point came at about 75%, but it was all good. Everything turned out okay, and yeah, it was a really, really good read. The only thing I didn't like about the book was how immature Carson acted after the death of his father in the story. I get wanting to end it, but not even wanting to talk to Millie about it was just a bit off to me. He went into his apartment and packed up all his shit, and with the intention of upping and leaving without a word to friends and family and everyone, and he didn't even want to talk to her about it, which I thought was a bit off. It was a bit of a contradiction considering how open and honest he was portrayed throughout the book. I thought it didn't make sense for his character to be doing that. I understand if he just wanted to end it, but not coming clean with everything. I mean, he did say bye eventually, but Millie had to literally drag everything out of his mouth the whole way after everything that transpired. I was like, good on you, girl. Every time Millie didn't want to like converse with him, every time he like reached out and she prolonged forgiving him. Millie, the main character, was both relatable and impressive. Her shy side was very close to how awkward people are. I feel like it's very close to how awkward people are, really. And her confident side, which came over her every time she was dealing with anything like related to baseball, was just so great. And she's just my kind of woman. Her older brother Corey, her baseball star brother, was such a good brother, and I really look forward to reading Corey's story because, as I understand it, this book is part of a series, and he was written so well in this one. So those were all the books that I read in February, and I hope you guys find books that you might want to read from this review, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching or like hearing about my opinions about it. Comment if you have any opinions about these books too, if you may have read it or if you intend on or are interested in reading it. And yeah, I will see you guys next time. Bye.